Jesus Christ.
The truth of the matter is, good, bad, or indifferent, Reservoir Dogs didn't really exist before I did it. Heist films had been made, and there's a whole story about this Hong Kong movie, City on Fire. If you've ever seen City on Fire, it's very, very different from my movie. The section that they say I took, I did take from it. All right, absolutely I took from it.
So this is the first time I've seen Tarantino openly acknowledge a lot of the accusations he's been hit with over the last 25 years. How Reservoir Dogs straight up stole from City on Fire. But how much of that is actually true?
Ain't a bad idea. Let's get him the f*** out of here.
Well, it's not just 10 minutes. Let's start with the obvious, this guy.
Mr. Orange.
An undercover cop who, although he tells himself this,
you're not gonna get hurt.
The very first thing that happens to him is this. But of course, if you're here, you probably already know that. What you might not know is that this, on the other hand, is Kamwa, another undercover cop facing a suspiciously similar situation. And that's not the only thing they have in common, because both stories could be described as
a story about a bunch of guys who plan a robbery and everything that can go wrong goes wrong.
All of which culminates in a confrontation with the police, a clumsy escape attempt by the crew, and, of course, the protagonist getting shot in the belly, only to then shoot an innocent person, breaking their own moral code and becoming criminals in the process. And if those parallels weren't enough, both stories funnel into the same place: an abandoned warehouse,
This man set us up.
paranoia about a rat in the crew, and the inevitable Mexican standoff.
Joe, if you kill that man, you die next.
Sure, Tarantino's version ends in a way that's, well, very Tarantino, but still, everything ends in tragedy, and the last gut punch is the same. And to close the film, the Hong Kong cops and the LAPD corner the survivors, with the undercover cop's identity being revealed in his very last breath.
Don't do it! Drop the gun, man! Don't drop the gun!
Now, I'm not the first one to point out these similarities.
A film called Who Do You Think You're Fooling, directed by Mike White, charges Tarantino with ripping off an obscure 1987 chopsaki flick from Hong Kong called City on Fire.
Back in 1994, a guy named Mike White made a video essay, before video essays were even a thing, lining up both films.
If either of these films teaches us anything, is that crime doesn't pay.
Although it doesn't exactly make the strongest case, the way he cuts them together is actually pretty great.
We're in the place, everything's going fine. Then the alarm gets tripped. I turn around and all these cops are outside.
And while at the time Tarantino never mentioned City on Fire, he clearly already had that 10-minute idea baked into him.
And the special thing about this movie, as opposed to other heist films, is the fact that what would normally be given 10 minutes, I decided to make the whole movie about that. About those 10 minutes, alright?
Though, like I said, the whole just 10 minutes thing is pretty debatable. In both stories, there is a crime boss putting together a crew for a jewelry heist, where an alarm blows the plan to pieces, and one unhinged thug starts firing on civilians.
Right, the cops didn't show up until after Mr. Blunt started shooting everybody.
And the parallels don't stop there. I mean, you can spot direct influence in the action sequences, or even in details that might seem minor, you can still trace the influences. For instance, director Ringo Lam foreshadows the protagonist's tragic fate by having his first meeting with the gang set in a cemetery. Meanwhile, Tarantino's warehouse is actually an abandoned mortuary, something you can discern from the bathroom tiles, the hearse, or, of course, the coffins scattered around. Perhaps Tarantino dropped that idea later on, because in the final edit, it's only noticeable if you really look for it. But the point is, I think the answer to that question is clearer than we might have thought. And while it may be controversial, I honestly don't think it changes the film's legacy.
Use the commode story.
You see, one of my favorite parts of the film is when Mr. Orange tells the commode story.
It's a commode story. It's a scene, man. Memorize it.
It's no surprise that Tarantino's whole filmography carries a meta-cinematic streak.
It's an interesting point. Come on, let's get in character.
Maybe that's why one of his most iconic scenes takes place in a movie theater, and why my favorite of his films is basically a love letter to cinema itself.
Look, man, an undercover cop's gotta be Marlon Brando, right? To do this job, you gotta be a great actor.
You gotta be naturalistic. You gotta be naturalistic as hell.
And what I love most about it is what it implies. How you can build a sense of believability out of something the audience knows is completely fake.
It's the details that sell your story.
So I walk into the men's room, and who's standing there?
Which plays out like a short film within the film.
4 Los Angeles County sheriffs and a German shepherd.
And in those minutes, it doesn't matter that you know it's fake, because Tarantino makes it so engaging that for the duration of that micro-narrative, you're hooked.
Right? And I gotta point it right at this guy. I tell him.
And by the time it ends and you're pulled back into the real story, you feel more aligned with the gang listening to it than with the narrator himself. That's why the line,
You gotta remember that this story is about you and how you perceive the events that went down,
resonates beyond the dialogue. It could almost stand as the aesthetic motto of Tarantino's films. Just as Mr. Orange transforms a borrowed story into his own through the active narration, so too does Reservoir Dogs as a whole.
What the fuck was I talking about?
For Tarantino's meta-cinema is not employed merely as homage, but as a constant attempt to rethink the very language of storytelling itself. I mean, heist movies were already a genre staple, and that Tarantino did was take the very thing that defined them and strip it away. The robbery itself. And the strange part is that, even though he withholds the one thing you think you came for, the heist, the film never feels incomplete. The narrative is so tight and so sharp that what's missing actually becomes the point.
Huh? Who did it? What the hell do you think we've been asking each other? Dan, what'd you come up with, huh?
That's because, instead of focusing on the causes, which is usually the most compelling part of a story like this, how the cop gets in, how the thieves are tailed, how the heist is planned, Reservoir Dogs shifts the spotlight to the consequences. To the point, almost everything interesting happens off-screen. We never actually see Mr. Blonde firing his gun.
This is what he was doing. Bam! 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 Bam!
Yet, it's an image that exists in all of our heads, each one slightly different. And in a way, it's the same trick he pulls with this camera movement.
That was one of the only scenes in the movie that I actually shot 2 ways. And I did another shot where the camera was like directly behind the cop as Michael straddles him and cuts off the ear. All right, because I wanted to be sure about which way to go.
And I think this moment is so interesting, not just because of its brutality, but because it's really the first of many in Tarantino's career that challenge you as a viewer. Because up until that moment, the tone of Reservoir Dogs had been completely different.
I don't tip.
You don't tip?
No, I don't believe in it.
I see it almost as a black comedy in a way.
And of course, when audiences saw it for the very first time, they didn't know they were watching a Tarantino film, which meant they didn't really know how to react. And they didn't realize they were witnessing the first steps of a master in conducting emotions like an orchestra. Something I think he perfected in Inglourious Basterds, as in these two scenes only 3 minutes apart, one hilarious and the other deeply uncomfortable. This ability to jump from one tone to another can perhaps be traced back to his influences from Asian cinema, which specializes in exactly that.
Well, John Woo was a big, major, hero to me at the time. I was just so influenced by Hong Kong cinema. All right, to me, I thought, and to this day, I still think it's like the most invigorating cinema that's made in the world, all right?
You can see it in the way he talks about John Woo, the face of Hong Kong cinema, but also right there in City on Fire, where tragedy and comedy coexist, though the humor is built in a very different way. Take this scene, for example, where one of the thieves protects a jewelry store employee and ends up fighting another member of the gang. The humor comes through the action itself in the way it's filmed, almost theatrical. It's essentially taking a situation that had been portrayed realistically up to that point and injecting it with the artifices of fiction to make it funny. For a moment, the film borrows from the conventions of classic visual comedy, showing the action in a wide shot to make it appear more ridiculous. Tarantino, on the other hand, flips that equation.
Mr. Brown, that's a little too close to Mr. Shit.
His humor comes from the opposite direction, taking a situation that belongs to fiction, like planning a heist, and adding a line of dialogue that feels like something your friend might actually say.
Who cares what your name is?
Yeah, that's easy for you to say. You're Mr. White. You have a cool-sounding name. All right, look, if it's no big deal to be Mr. Pink, you want to trade?
Oftentimes, I'm trying to show it in such a realistic setting, but the foibles of real life thrust onto this, action-adventure situation, but like how it would really play in real life, so it starts seeming absurd.
Here, the jokes don't get any special emphasis. In fact, they aren't treated differently at all, because for Tarantino, dialogue is always made of the same raw material, whether it's an interrogation or a comment about Madonna. And of course, these are moments that don't push the narrative forward, since his cinema is full of constant digressions, one after another, an idea he pushed to the extreme in Once Upon a Time. It's the kind of filmmaking where you're never sure if the scene you're watching is actually relevant to the plot, and you simply end up enjoying the musicality of the dialogue.
Toby Wong, Toby Chung, and Charlie Chan.
And to be honest, not everyone got that right away.
It is empty, and that's the problem. It isn't about anything, and I know that style is very important, and I know that other crime films can be stodgy, and this can seem fresh by itself, but basically, you get the point real quickly, and there's nothing more to say.
One of the main criticisms was that, because of choices like this, the film was all style over substance. But that really depends on how you see cinema. For me, and I think for anyone who loves this kind of filmmaking, style is part of the substance. That's why, even though at first the similarities with City on Fire might be a little jarring, I don't think they diminish Reservoir Dogs. Just like with that scene with Mr. Orange, it doesn't matter where the story comes from, but how you tell it. Because when you watch the film, you know that despite all its influences, or perhaps because of them, you're watching a Tarantino film. And if there's one thing I take away from all this, it's how nourishing it is to watch cinema from different corners of the world. And the good thing is, today it's easier than ever, thanks to our sponsor Mubi, a curated streaming service dedicated to elevating great cinema from all around the globe. On Mubi, you'll find everything from legendary auteurs to fresh new voices, with each film handpicked by their team of curators, so you can discover the best of cinema right at your fingertips, streaming anytime, anywhere. Personally, I'd recommend checking out Revenge by Coralie Farjat, the director of The Substance. If you enjoy Tarantino's brand of exploitation cinema, chances are you'll also love this film, which to me features a fascinating protagonist and shares many aesthetic elements with Tarantino's work, perhaps because both draw from that same well of 1970s exploitation influences. And the best part is, you can watch it right now with a free 30-day trial of Mubi at mubi.com/Lancelotti. That's mubi.com/Lancelotti for a whole month of great cinema for free.